Hey guys, it's Joe. I just want to say this podcast is definitely a special one. Amit is a titan in the industry and he's seen the growth of brands. He has decades of experience and there's lots to learn in this one. We really wanted to make this podcast special, so we filmed this in the middle of the dye house floor. So in the beginning, the audio is a little rough, but it gets better throughout the podcast.
All right, guys, this is the Shift Fashion Podcast. Today I have the Amit from Roopa Knitting. Roopa is the largest knitting house in Canada. Amit, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You want to kind of talk to us about the history of Roopa and, how do we get here today?
The company was established in '91 by my father. He had many years of experience in production on fabric and started his own business doing this out of our home, actually. Graduated to the point of buying machinery, opening up our own plant, and I joined him. I was always in the middle of it, learning with him. As a kid, the only son, there's a little bit of unspoken pressure there that got to help my father, and I learned it throughout school when I was going to school and working with him, and then finishing up university. Moved out here to Toronto with him, where he opened up a plant, had his own machinery, and we did that for we've been doing that for, well, from the time that we moved here to before starting this dye house that we're sitting in was about, I would say about 16 years, 17 years. And then 5 years ago, sort of came full circle on it, being vertical in terms of owning your own knitting mill and your own dye house. Started up this dyeing plant, and we're in its about 5th year of its operations now.
Yeah, and it's quite the impressive operation that we have been able to do again. And thank you so much for allowing us to do a tour. And
No
there's going to be a lot of educational content in terms of, how does you actually make things in Canada?
Yeah, I always say I'm a business person, but I'm not just here to sell. I think a big part of what I do is educating our clients, and by extension through you guys, educating viewers. I think it's important to know, everything that happens when you're making product, right? Fashion, clothing. I always say we put on a t-shirt every day of our lives almost, and it's the most common piece of fabric, the most widespread, and just knowing the amount of steps and all the things that have to happen for that t-shirt to come to fruition is sometimes mind-blowing. It's not so automated. It's got a lot of hands-on. It's got a lot of stages to it. So
let's talk about that. I think when it comes to fashion, a lot of people, they're just looking for they just look at a t-shirt and they look at the price. They really don't understand the amount of steps it takes to make all the components that actually that creates that t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, there's so many stages, and it boggles my mind how sometimes you can go into a fast fashion shop and at retail buy t-shirts for $5 or $10, and that's taking into consideration the markup and the margin that retailer has. So if they are selling it for $10, what did they buy it for? And what did the person that sold it to them sell it to them for? And at $10, even 15 at retail, to me, someone or something had to suffer for you to have that t-shirt at that price. That's just my philosophy on that.
And I'm kind of the same accord in terms of, we mentioned earlier in terms of the quality of garments and being willing to spend a little bit more in terms of even manufacturing costs. Yeah. You're getting t-shirts that people are selling for $200, $150. The difference between a $2 t-shirt and a $15 t-shirt is massive.
It is. Between 2 and 15, definitely.
Yeah.
Because, and that's not only in the product quality, but also in how it was made, right? And where it was made, and what inputs went into it. When you start getting to that $100, $200, $300 t-shirt, I think at that point you're seeing diminishing returns, and it's really all about branding, putting a specific name or a specific logo on the shirt is going to do that. There are, to a certain degree, materials that can help you do that. You know, if you're using cotton and you're using the best of the best cotton, I mean, you know, I own a t-shirt made of Sea Island cotton, and Sea Island cotton is the rarest, most pristine, most long staple, extra long staple cotton in the world. You can justify $200 on that t-shirt. I own one and it doesn't even have a logo on it.
Yeah.
But, you know, outside infusing fibers like cashmere or some nice wools, with regular cotton, poly cotton, you're looking at, you know, it's all marketing.
Yeah, and most people aren't going to even notice the difference between, you know, like you said, I have a shirt made of Giza cotton as well. Not as nice as Sea Island cotton, but at some point, the average consumer is not even going to notice the difference, and it becomes more of a, you know, like a fine wine, something that's special.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, I guess I am a bit of a cotton snob, so when you come to Sea Island, like I feel it, I'm like, wow, this is silky,
Yeah.
right? If you touch that, you can tell.
Yeah.
But outside of going that far into, you know, the quality of the cotton or the variety of it, yeah, a lot of it is hard to tell the difference in.
Could you give the audience a little bit insight? Like, what would the cost difference be between a Sea Island cotton and just like a regular?
So, you know, I can take this back to just the raw fiber, or if you will, the yarn spun from that.
Mm.
So let's take away any of the cutting, sewing, knitting, dyeing, and all that stuff. Buying a cotton yarn that's made with, let's say, regular ring spun combed cotton, which is a nice soft cotton, great quality cotton, would probably be somewhere around $5 a kilogram. Sea Island cotton, same size, same thickness of yarn, you're talking probably $100 a kilo. So, you know, if we're making a t-shirt, you know, a really good t-shirt out of regular ring spun cotton, that thing's costing maybe $15, you know, at wholesale, let's say. The same t-shirt made out of Sea Island cotton, the price somewhere around 80, 90 minimum. And you got to keep in mind that the cost to knit, the cost to dye, cut, and sew are all the same. It doesn't matter what the cotton is.
Just the material.
So it's really attributed to the material, and that's where you can have an appreciation for it and say, well, you know, make a distinction between the different quality of the material. You know, you can buy fake leather or you can buy, you know, premium new buck amazing leather. So it's the same thing with the cotton.
And you talked a lot about in terms of the cost to make. You know, obviously being Roopa, you're based in Canada. You make a lot of your garments here in Canada. What you know, with the globalization that's happening in terms of everyone just trying to chase for cheaper and cheaper product.
Yeah.
You know, being in the industry, what is your kind of insight into where fashion's going within Canada, and where it's actually come in the past 10 years?
You know, Canada actually used to be, textiles and apparel actually used to be Canada's largest industry.
Did not know that.
Pre-70s, pre-60s, I'm talking. We had yarn spinning companies here. We had a huge textile industry. And obviously the onslaught of, you know, imports with China, Vietnam joining the World Trade Organization in the mid-2000s just decimated it, right? Why make a t-shirt here for $5 or $10 or even at the time, right? $5, $7, $8 when you can bring one in for $1. So it kind of killed it. We luckily have been fortunate enough and blessed enough to sort of grow. I mean, from the time that my father started the business to now, we're actually, you know, have consistently produced more product locally, and I thank, you know, consumers for that, because people have to care, right? You have to. I think there's a growing trend in people's desire to want things to be made here. You know, like if I'm shopping, I'd rather pick a product made in my own country versus one overseas if it's available.
You're able to support local industries. You're able
Totally.
to, as a brand, you're able to visit the factories you're working with.
Yeah, and you're able to do that, and then most of the times, our clients, you guys being included, are on this side of the world, right? So, and speak this language. So, the time zone, speaking the language, being able to visit, these are all benefits to the brands, the customers, ultimately the consumers. Yeah.
And I think in terms of where just even the larger growth cycle of globalization and manufacturing over time, naturally it progresses to more, higher returns of output for the input. So you look at a lot of growing industries that starts off with low cost labor, cheap clothing. Eventually you get to Swiss watches selling
Right.
for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's where Canada has to move in terms of being able to sustain a manufacturing base, is now churning out more higher quality products, specialty products, and products that you ultimately can't manufacture overseas because the expertise and the know-how is going to be here.
You kind of see that with a lot of Canadian clothing brands and the ones that have gotten big. And, two names I can pull, Canada Goose and Arc'teryx, they are not making just basic commodity products. They are doing technical products. And that's kind of, you're right, that's kind of where it's gone within the apparel field in Canada, right? But we hope to, continue pushing, the products that we do, which is, maybe they're not super technical. They can be, but what we produce just within the fleece and the t-shirt game, being at the top of the echelons in what we do, yeah, quality-wise.
And I think that does well because you're so close to the demand for your product. There's such a speed of iteration of, you knit something, you make something, you can wear it outside and get instant feedback.
Yeah. And I mean, you know what? I'd hesitate to say to not say that we're definitely not fast fashion. Yeah. I mean, it takes time to do things, but I guess when we're comparing to producing on the other side of the world, I mean, you lose that whole, transit time, right? I mean, shipping things by boat takes 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. So, shipping something from Toronto, where we are, we can get to LA in 3 business days, 4 business days. So New York next day. And I think there's a lot to that as well, right? As far as time, cost of the time, carbon footprint, so they're all minimized.
So in terms of manufacturing things with Roopa and just in general in North America, what is your typical kind of like time to market from prototyping to knitting and the entire process?
I mean, if you're talking about from the fabric side, I mean, we can turn fabric for sampling really quick in a couple of days, right? If we had to. And then taking it to the garment side, patterning a couple of days, and then prototyping a sample a few more days, give the whole thing 2 weeks. And then, for production, depending on what the product is, the volume, but 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, in and around that area. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the considerations a lot of brands have to think of is, as you build and scale, you have lower cost offerings overseas, but you have to understand that if you're not air freighting, which is a waste of money,
huge,
you have to have a lot of money sitting on the water.
Yep.
And being able to understand that you're not going to have the agility to adapt to your specific market conditions as you would if you did make in the country that you are selling your goods in, because if let's say they are making, you have the fabric already made, you can make your shirts here, you can screen print them here. If you store them as blanks to get screen printed on, you can turn around products within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, totally. And with the whole importation process, we're also not thinking about, things like world events. When COVID happened, I mean, like ocean shipping just came almost to a standstill. It was so inundated that, containers that you would normally get over in 4 weeks might take 3 or 4 months. So
And
there's a
cost as
cost,
well.
right? There's the cost. I mean, the cost tripled and quadrupled and quintupled, but not getting the product in for brands, like not getting it on time, is a huge cost, right?
Yeah.
They plan launches, they plan their season, they plan the whole economics and commerce of it around that. So not getting something in on time is detrimental, sometimes.
And I think with a lot of brands, you obviously work with a lot of brands. Some brands, I'm sure, are going to be very efficient with their planning. Some aren't going to be. Like, we're already working on spring, summer 2026 for some of our clients.
Yeah.
And being able to plan far enough ahead is so important to be able to make sure you deliver the product on time. You're not scrambling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's this thing called a calendar, and some people have never heard of one. But, a work back calendar, a time and action calendar, and being on calendar is something, that's not new to fashion. Whether you work by season or by drop, having a calendar as a brand and planning out, and listen, some of the largest brands aren't on calendar and are always trying and trying to catch up. But, when you find that right formula, that right mix, you definitely are about a year out.
Yeah. Then it allows you to not worry. You do your designs, do your prototyping ahead of time, and then when it's time, you just click order.
Yeah, click order and wait for it to come. Exactly. Yeah.
So again, we're in such a vast space here. In terms of what you've been able to achieve has been very impressive. Where are you kind of looking to head next with this business?
As far as the plants go, verticality has pretty much been achieved. I mean, we knit, we dye, we cut and sew. We've got our own brand, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, it's more just, growing by introducing new clients, finding new opportunities, making new products. The infrastructure and the base is all here now. So it's just using it, getting more people to recognize that it's here and that they can make things here, You talk to a lot of people not even in the fashion business or apparel business, and they're shocked to hear that clothing is actually still made here.
In terms of, we've talked about the scale of the building, but just to give the audience in terms of the scale of what Canada's largest knitting producer is, what does that actually equate to?
Well, in what terms of measurement are we using? What units of measurement are we using here? Like number of sweatshirts, number of t-shirts?
I think that would be an easier way. I think if you use yards or kilograms, it might be difficult. But yeah, t-shirts.
I mean, t-shirts, the capacity here is, as far as what we produce or what we can produce, I mean, it's in the millions. It's nowhere near the size of,
like a Gildan,
like a Honduras or a Bangladesh. I mean, they can pump out 1 million maybe in a week, or even a day. But over the course of a year, I would say we probably produce around 600,000 or 700,000 sweatshirts, and about a little over 1 million t-shirts around there.
Which is very significant for, Canada.
Canada, yeah. Not old Canada, but today with globalization and importing of products,
And when we talk about the Gildans of the world and producing in Honduras and Bangladesh, these are literally small towns, these factories.
They are. I mean, they're compounds too, right?
Yeah.
So, I had one employee who joined us from India. He was working in Africa, in Tanzania. And it's literally a compound the size of a little city. And they've got, their living quarters there. They've got their restaurants or their cafeteria there. They don't have to leave, And oftentimes in these countries, they're not allowed to leave. So it is. The size and the magnitude of it is enormous compared to what we've got here. I mean, this is I call it, even as big as it looks, I call it boutique level. you know.
We talked about this even last time, where when you get to that kind of scale of a Gildan, they're literally commodity trading.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get to that scale.
Yeah.
The only Gildan
there.
is Gildan, right? But it is. I mean, they own futures in cotton, right? Like I was talking with someone this morning that like these yarn mills like Gildan, or like they're vertical.
Yeah.
They don't only own their cotton sew factory, they own their knitting, they own their dyeing, they own the yarn spinning, they own the cotton fields, and they have futures in cotton. Like they dictate what cotton prices will be down the line.
That's true.
And what the rest of the world is going to pay. So they're definitely very impactful in that sense.
And like, you know, that's where they're selling t-shirts for less than a couple bucks, even like landed in North America.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can get t-shirts, you know, from Honduras or Bangladesh for $2, you know, and they're making a penny or two on them sometimes, but that's the volume they do it at, right? Yeah.
And we also talked about, in terms of like labor here in Canada,
yeah,
about finding skilled workers, you know, being...
What are those?
you have, obviously, there's a lot of things that need to be done in this building.
Yeah.
You know, how has your kind of experience been? There's been a lot of immigration recently as well.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to take advantage of immigration and, you know, bringing in talent. This is not a field that, you know, Canada has decided, you know, unlike IT, for example, that they're going to open up the doors to, that, you know, people can learn or study. Like, I mean, there are no textile schools here. Yeah. You know, there might be fashion design, but you're learning fashion design without knowing how to make a damn thing, you know? Yeah.
Learning how to just draw.
Listen, Illustrator and Photoshop it, right? And then click send to email it to someone in Bangladesh. So there is no education base here for textile manufacturing. There is no immigration stream for it. But we need to use immigration to bring people from there, because they just don't exist here.
Yeah.
You know, and if they do, they're all at retirement age. You know, some people that work for us could retire already, you know, and we need to like almost beg them to stay. So finding the right skills, it's if you've been in it for a long time here, you're in it. Otherwise, we got to find people from outside, or we got to do a lot of training. Yeah. Like we bring in people and we have to train. It's a, you know, training is a kind of a term that, you know, previously would not have thought of being as a part of the business, but now it's like an everyday thing. You know, you're bringing in people and you need to train them how to run the machines, how to operate them, you know, and that's just the nature of like this environment that we're in.
And I think that's such a, you know, in North America, we've kind of touted secondary education. It might be a little controversial, but a lot of people don't realize universities are a business. Their business is just getting you through the program, but especially in fashion, you need to touch fabrics, you need to feel fabrics, you need to make things, because
visit the mill.
you can't just draw and sketch, because you're not going to understand what you're creating at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've faced that a lot of times with clients who are designers and whatnot, and you know, we're here to hold hands and educate as well. But there's nothing that beats that street education, right? Like being in the thick of it, that practical education. Theory is something, but touching it, feeling it is definitely the ultimate goal in learning, you know, and knowing about things.
And knowing when things go wrong and how to solve it, and just doing that over and over again. All right, mate, so you've been doing this for 3 decades at this point. You know, knowing where the industry's going, knowing everything that's happening, you know, how do you kind of stay in it?
Dedication, you know. Sometimes you just get used to doing things, right? This is what I'm in, this is what I know, and this is what I do. And how do we stick around? I mean, listen, we weren't always the largest mill, and I don't say we're the largest mill with any sense of like braggadocio or anything like that. It's almost, it pains me in a way. It actually used to be a really huge industry in this country, and we were a small company. It just so happens that, as they say, that the bigger you are, the harder you fall. And when importation started happening, you know, the big mills, you know, when you lose a big chunk of business, you don't survive. We were always small and stayed lean. We were able to ride through those waves, you know, and come out the other end. We are the largest now. I don't know what that means in 10 years, but, you know, being lean, being small is kind of like almost favorable in this industry, and given its size in Canada. But I think, you know what, there is a growing sentiment in consumers. You know, we were talking about millennials earlier, looking at things and wanting to make them here, you know, seeing value in, you know, where the product is made. Because remember, when we talk about sustainability, it's not just, oh, is it made with organic cotton? You know, sustainability is also circular economy, locality of that, you know, like you're making it here and you're selling it here, you know? So there's a growing sentiment towards that. You know, I remember reading CBC, you know, news articles about the Pan Am Games when they were here in Toronto, and how the T-shirts came from overseas. Yeah. All right. And they had a mistake in them, and the local printers here had to reprint them. The commentary at the bottom of that article was, you know, appropriate. It was like, well, that's what you get for bringing stuff from there. Yeah. If the Pan Am Games are here, are we not able to make T-shirts here? Of course we are. But, you know, commerce always enters the conversation, and minimize the cost and maximize the profit is always a part of most people's formula.
Capitalism.
Yeah, that's capitalism, right? And I think that, you know, you can have capitalism, but also be a little more conscious of the way you're doing it, you know? And that's the important thing. That's why we're always like, you know, people ask me, why don't you just import the T-shirts and sell them here? Wouldn't be who we are. That's not our DNA, you know? And I'm born in Canada. I'm made in Canada. I want to make in Canada. That's just how.
That's your raison d'etre, your reason for being.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. You know, I think a lot of people think with business it's just a linear line up, but I know you've had a lot of ups and you've definitely had a lot of downs.
Yeah.
You know, what's some kind of advice you'd give your younger self?
Well, we were joking earlier that I'd probably tell myself to stay away from this business, but I think one of my passions is always, you know, when a new fabric is being developed on the machines and we got ideas, seeing the design of the fabric or the characteristics of it, that gives me a pulse. Yeah. So I think, and you know, if we didn't do that, I don't think we would have had some of the success we've had. So definitely always researching, developing, learning. This is a field where you never stop learning, right? I've been in it 30 years. I learn things every day. Yeah. So I think that's really what it is. It's not only like, you know, what would you do to make more money, or what's the product you would have done or sold or keyed in on, but what did you do to make yourself whole too, right? And learn, you know, because at the end of the day, I mean, that's, you know, we want to build ourselves up too. So
and you know, I think you've done an excellent job in terms of finding your specific competitive advantage of, you know, and that's why you've been able to grow the business. That's why you've been able to sustain it. It's not easy sustaining a business for 30 years. And, you know, I don't know how many people tell you this, but, you know, I know how much work you put in.
It's not easy. I mean, a lot of times I've cried and said, I wish I didn't handle product. You know, I wish I was in banking. I wish I was in mortgages. It's a buyer's market. You know, it's not a seller's market, because product can be made anywhere now, right? So it's not a thing where, you know, you tell the client, well, take it or leave it. They will leave it. Buyers are extremely, I don't want to say picky, but rather discerning on so many things: color, shrinkage, fit, specs, finish. And all these things have to be nailed because you're at the higher end of the spectrum as far as price comes into conversation. So it's not easy being in a,
especially in fashion where a
You have-
million things can go wrong.
a million things can go wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
every day you wake up and there's a call or an email, there's a problem with this, there's a problem with that. And I think I've gotten to the age where I freak out less about it, you know, and take it all in stride because at the end of the day, it's not going to make or break you. It's just, it's a headache. And the fashion business has headaches. Somebody's going to print something wrong. Somebody's going to cut the wrong pattern. Somebody's going to put the wrong yarn on the machine. Somebody's going to dye it burgundy instead of red. Shit happens. Yeah.
I feel like you're very much like me where I'm that dog in like the house that's burning down with this cup of coffee and be like, this is fine.
Yeah, this is fine. That meme at the computer, right? There's nothing going on. Well, that's the whole thing. Like nothing is going to, you know, burn the house
The
down.
sun will rise
you know?
tomorrow.
It will.
Tomorrow's another
It will.
day.
And you know, I always say to people, and this is maybe a crazy thing to say to your client who's buying clothes from you, but it's just clothes. You know,
It's true.
it's just clothes. You know, we look at other, you know, professions, whether you're a doctor or something like actually really, really important, and it puts things into perspective, right?
You've been in this for so long. You worked with so many brands. You've seen brands rise and fall. If you were to give, let's say, 3 top pieces of advice for brands and aspiring brand designers and owners and creators, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
Wow. 3 pieces of advice. You know, it's 2024 and marketing has, in the last decade or so, risen to become just as important as the product. You used to be able to take a product and say, look how good my product is. And, you know, the social media has changed that. I'm sure you know that too, right? To the effect where even a poorly made product can sell out. So
All the time. There's a anti-social social club.
cough, cough, right? It's you do them, right?
Yeah.
You did the fear of God, essentially. I mean, there's products that are not well made.
Yeah.
You know, and they can be made. We can pick them apart. So, you know, definitely, good product, commitment to good quality, and a good product will give you longevity. Will not make you a flash in the pan, right? You can ride away. You could make a few million with a shitty product if your marketing is hype and you've got, you know, got all that built up. But I think for longevity, the product has to really be good. And now the marketing has to match it because everybody's leveling up. Everybody's, you know, getting into a clothing game, like building a clothing brand is not something that just anybody could have done. And today with all the resources on just Instagram alone, you know, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step manual that anybody out of their home can do this, right?
Yeah.
So good product, good quality. Number 2, great marketing. And number 3, stick with it. The biggest brands were not built in a year or 2 or 3. Ask Ralph Lauren how long it took him. Ask, you know, Supreme how long it took them to get to where they are. Ask any big brand, you know. It takes a long time.
Fashion is a marathon.
It
And
is.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of brands and people, they're like, oh, it came out of nowhere. It's overnight success. No, that brand owner's
It
been
might
hustling.
be. It might be. But is it going to be here in 5 years?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of brands that I'm sure we've all seen come and go, you know. So I don't want to name any names, but I think longevity is the key, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The quality of the product is what's keep people coming back. You know.
Yeah.
I look at Lululemon and like, in terms of their technical products, you know, I've worked with factories that even have to go through their audit process. They're not perfect by any means, but for the most part, people go back there because they know it's going to be at least a specific quality level. And I think a lot of brands, they they have one manufacturer that makes stuff really good, and then they try to make something with another manufacturer. This is shit, and it varies. What you need to be is consistent.
Definitely, yeah. And they do a good job of that. They do. Yeah. I think that's a big thing. Yeah, the quality of the product has to be bang on. Sometimes trying to switch the product to get a lower cost could end up backfiring.
Let's talk about that, because you know, that happens a lot in fashion. A lot of people will pivot into a specific region, and they go to manufacturers, and all they care about is the price. And they don't realize, if you ask a manufacturer to do something for $5, they'll get it done for $5, but they'll use all the steps needed to get it done for $5.
Yeah.
Instead of giving them, they'll choose cheaper yarn, choose cheaper thread, choose cheaper finishing, everything, because that was the mission you gave them.
Yeah.
Is to get it for cheapest. When you go to a manufacturer, ask for the quality product and see what the price will be.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk with clients, it never starts at what's the price, I mean, usually that's the question we get. And I can't answer that question, because unless I have all the information in front of me, there's no way to give a price. But you can go to parts of the world and say, how much is a t-shirt? And they'll tell you just like that, oh, a t-shirt's... And for me, it's more, let me tell you what kind of options you have, or let me find out from you what you want as far as the options go. And then we can tell you what that costs, right? So the focus for us is never on price, because we know we're high. We know we're higher than, any other country with lower cost labor. So it's not because we're padding our pockets, it's because we want to put the best into it. I've been asked many times, like, how can I make this cheaper? What could you do to make it cheaper? And I say, I don't know. It's not in my DNA. Even if it existed, I'm not interested in it. There are plenty of suppliers for that, right? Yeah. You can go to McDonald's, or you can go to a really fancy steakhouse and eat well. So it's a choice.
And also, often brands will try to squeeze their manufacturer for $1 or $2. That $1 or $2 makes a big difference in the quality of the product, compared to changing the retail price $1 or $2 more, which would not even be discernible.
They've got a lot of room. Let's just put it that way in the margins, right? Whatever a product costs to make, it's retailing for at least 3 to 4 times. So
sometimes,
if not
significantly more.
I mean, it depends on who's making it, right? But I guess one of those common formulations is 3 to 4 times. But it's interesting to see how much the manufacturer actually makes after you consider the magnitude of, the space, the machinery, the processes. I mean, we make a t-shirt, if we're making t-shirts for your brand, we're probably making $1 gross profit per t-shirt at the end of the day. And then the brand is selling it for 3, 4, 5 times what they paid. Yeah. So it's, when you talk about brands squeezing the manufacturer, I like to squeeze them right on out the door, because it's not like, you're not coming here for that, You come here for the quality, you come here for the trust, you come here for the guidance, you come here for the reliability.
You come here for a meet.
And the straightforward, blunt honesty.
Yeah. I think this is a great podcast. I think we were able to get so much insight from you for our audience. And I want to thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for allowing us in your space.
No problem.
Please let them know where they can find you.
Roopa.com if you're looking for any sort of fabric manufacturing or apparel manufacturing. We've got Roopa Knitting on Instagram. We also have our website, House of Blanks, a separate company that does blank apparel. If you're not at the point of doing your own custom manufacturing, you can always buy these high-end pieces that you can brand yourself at houseofblanks.com or House of Blanks on IG.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. And until next time, guys.
If you guys want to see more of these type of videos and more on what goes on behind the scenes in fashion, don't forget to subscribe and check out these videos.